All right, so I just got through watching this video that you're about to watch that we made for you, and I'm not gonna lie, it's dry. It's kind of boring. It's not a super fun video, but it is one of the things learning which made me really just have better time. Like once I got this idea that I'm talking about in this boring video that you're about to watch, it was just so much easier to remember what the crazy dancers were telling me to remember for the show that was coming up, to learn the really hard stuff, to learn the crazy rhythms. Like this was the thing that made rhythm basically not be a problem for me anymore. I always had good compás, but like this just made everything easier. So don't watch it. Like if you're not super into making your time really good, just don't bother. Go watch someone play a lot of guitar and that'll be more fun. But if you really want to get your time better, then suck it up and watch this boring video. Hey, I'm Kai from Flamenco Explained, and today we're going to look at time. We're going to look at beats and subdivisions and counting and how to really own that. So if you play something like you can totally understand what you're doing in time and within the context of the compás. There's this whole idea that you don't have to count in flamenco. I don't buy that for a minute. You have to count in order to get to the point where you understand all this stuff. So it's a little didactic, I'm not gonna lie, but we're gonna get into really important skills for owning the time element of flamenco, which is the most important part of flamenco. So now what we're going to do is just really quickly review some syllables that I use for naming the subdivisions of beats. And the subdivision of a beat is just what happens inside of a beat, right? Because a beat can have a lot going on in there. So for the purposes of naming what we're doing, if we're just using the downbeat of a beat, we're going to say the number of that beat, 1 through 12. If we're talking about eighth notes, which is 2 notes per beat, we're going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Right? The only weird place is when we get to 7, I'm going to say 7 instead of 7 and, because I only want to hear 2 things happen. And then when we get to 11, it gets really weird. I'm going to go 10, 11, right? Because I don't want to go 10 and 11 and, because I want it to sound like bop, 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 bop. So that's my system. Nothing magical about the way I say it. These are just the syllables that work for me. So 7, 8, and 9, and 10, 11, 12, and then everything else gets 1. For triplets, we're going to say 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 7 and 8 and a 9 and a 10 and 11 and 12 and right? So 7 and 11 are always going to trip us up a little bit, and you want to get used to spitting those out. For 16th notes, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 7 and a 80 and a 90 and a 10 and 11 and a 12 and a little weird. Take a minute to get used to that, right? So how do we actually apply all these weird syllables to playing? So the first thing we're going to do is just take quarter notes, which is 1 note per beat, right? So a good example of that would be something in a Solea, where we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? I'm 1 event on the downbeat per beat. Now this is pretty rare in flamenco, and this is really just counting compás, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. So let's assume that that's not a problem for you. Now we're going to switch to por medio, and we're just going to use Solea por bulería for the rest of this video. So the Solea por bulería compás is like a mid-tempo 12 thing, which just means that it's faster than a Solea and it's not as fast as a bulería, but it's a 12. So on paper, it's exactly the same as a Solea. Generally, we play Solea por bulería por medio, but it's basically like everything transposed. So instead of these chords, we're doing B flat and A, right? And we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, right? So a very traditional Solea por bulería compás, which is kind of what we're going to use to look at here, would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? And that alone would be a perfect thing to analyze or to play to learn this system of syllables and connecting them to your rasgueados. If we're doing eighth notes, right, that's 2 notes per beat. So we might think of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, 8 and 9 and 10, 11, 12, and, right? A really common thing would be down, up for eighth notes, but it could be anything, you know. It's more about the time. I'm going to do 16th notes next, even though, you know, triplets should be there, because this is so common. If I do a 3-finger rasgueado, down, 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 up, that's 4 notes per beat, right? 1 E and A. Now, sometimes just teaching, I'll just go rasgueado, and that kind of works, but that doesn't tell me what beat it is, so it's not quite as useful. So I want to get used to saying, for example, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and a 8 and 9 E and a 10, 11, 12. Right? This is a great example of how being able to say what you're doing helps you understand what you're doing. They go 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and a 8 and 9 E and a 10. Right? Very easy way to say exactly what I'm doing and really understand it. And really the way this is going to be the most useful is backwards, right? So if you hear someone play and you're trying to figure out what's happening, the first thing you want to do is really process that sound. And once you can mimic it, then you're saying, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are 16th notes, so it's 1 E and a 2 E and a, right? And then 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and you notice that the mpa, so you're accenting the ands a little more there. And then 7 and a 8 and 9 E and a 10. So I can take the same beginning, right? So what did I do there? Right? Once I can hear it, then I'm thinking, okay, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and a 8 and 9 E and a 10, 11, 12. Right? On the one hand, it may seem unnecessary to do this. But what I'm basically here to tell you is that if you can own this way of hearing what's happening inside each beat and you can really name what you're doing, it makes counting just so much easier. And the better you get at counting, the less eventually you have to count, which is the goal, right? No matter how many times I say, you have to count, you must count a lot. You know, unless your compás is completely perfect and you've never made a mistake, you need to count. The way to get to the point where you're not counting is by counting really well, as much as possible, right? So, just to give us a little bit of a system to practice, let's use the right hand rasgueados to think about these syllables. So, if we're just doing downbeats, then 1, 2, 3, that's pretty straightforward, right? You just have to be able to count to 12. For eighth notes, you're going to do down, up, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, 8 and 9 and 10, 11, 12, and. But you'll notice that in real life, very often we're doing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, for example, right? So you really want to be in control of keeping track of, you know, 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and that kind of thing, so that you really know where you are. You're not losing track of your place or the beat, but you're really on top of what you're doing. 16th notes, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3. So for practice, I mean, it's not very common that you would do a full compás of rasgueados, right? Although it does certainly happen. To practice it, you might do 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 5E and a 6E and a 7 and a 8E and a 9E and a 10 and an 11 and a 12, that kind of thing. Triplets, 1 and a, right? Triplets, we're going to do the 2-finger rasgueado, down, down, up. Some people do M and I. So, sorry, some of us do M and I. Some do A and I. It doesn't make a difference. But it's down, down, up. So you do 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 7 and 8 and a 9 and a 10. And then the fun part comes where you start accenting different ones. So the obvious thing would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and. With 16th notes, if you accented the and, it would be 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. But you've got the other ones, right? 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a. And now you're actually working on your rasgueado without even thinking about it because you're learning control, right? Or 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a. So connecting, saying the syllables to what's going on in your right hand can be super helpful. So for triplets, 1 and a, 2 and a, 3 and a, or 1 and a, 2 and a, 3 and a, or 1 and a, 2 and a, 3 and a. So I think if you connect these to the rasgueados, then later on, once you have these sounds, right, the actual technique you use might be a scale or an alzapúa, or anything, but you're hearing taka 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 taka, right? And then you might hear taka 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 taka, right? It's not necessarily going to start on the downbeat. So what I'm recommending here is that you connect the syllables that we reviewed at the beginning of this video to your rasgueado patterns, right? 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1 and a 2 and a 1E and a 2E and a. And if you want to do sextuplets, what I would recommend is 1, 2, right? So it'd be 1 and a triplet, 2 and a triplet, 3 and a triplet. If you can connect the syllables to your right hand, you're on your way to being able to count anything that anyone throws at you. All right, now comes the super nerdy part. So if you want to really dig into beats and subdivisions and what we call them in more detail, keep watching. If not, class is over. So the first thing we need to understand is basically the difference between a measure or a bar, which is the same thing, or a compás, a beat, and then the subdivisions of a beat, right? So again, if we start in 4/4, it's easy to understand. So a measure of 4/4 has 4 beats, and each one of those beats is a quarter note. And if you don't know what that means, it's actually okay because you're going to be able to follow along in a sec without understanding those words. But basically, a measure of 4/4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One measure is 4 beats, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 is one measure. One of the things you need to do is sort of learn how to keep track of the beats, and eventually you're going to feel that and you're not going to have to think about it too much, right? But this counting that we're going to do is going to be really helpful. So if we first learn how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then as we're listening to music, we can think to ourselves, oh, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2. Oh, that started on 4. It didn't start on the downbeat, right? So naming the beats makes it easier to understand what's happening in the music. And what we're going to do is we're going to dig into the subdivisions of each beat. Because when music is in 4/4, that doesn't mean that we only have one note on each beat, right? Very often we have 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, however many notes per beat. And that's what we're learning to keep track of, the subdivisions. So the most common subdivisions are what we call eighth notes, triplets, and 16th notes. Eighth notes, and it doesn't really matter why. I'm not going to get into why we call the notes what we do, because for our purposes that doesn't matter too much. But eighth notes is 2 notes per beat, triplets is 3 notes per beat, 16th notes is 4 notes per beat. Then we also have sextuplets, which is 6 notes per beat. And we're not going to get into 30-second notes. And there's other ways to subdivide, but these are the most important ones. So the first thing I want you to do is either clapping, snapping, just feeling the beat somehow, is first you establish your beat, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter what tempo we're talking about, right? The next thing we want to do is divide it into 2, right? So if we do 2 notes per beat, it can sound like 1, ba, 2, ba, 3, ba, 4, ba. But this is where it gets interesting. if we start to name the subdivisions, it becomes much easier to keep track of them. So 1 and 2 and 3 and is the most commonly used thing, and it makes perfect sense. So we say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, etc., right? Now, we're not always going to have every beat with 2 notes in it. So one of the things eventually we're going to get used to is 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 4 and 1, 2 and 4 and 1, etc. Stuff like that, where, you know, it's each beat can be a little different from the one that preceded. That's what makes rhythm interesting. So one of the first things you want to do is just get used to this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, counting that way. And then maybe just say the ands, right? This is like basic contratiempo, syncopation. And, right? So that you have control over whether you're expressing the downbeat, both eighth notes, or just the ands, the second eighth notes of each thing, right? So then we're going to do the same thing with triplets. A couple different ways to count triplets. The most common one is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and And I should say, with all these syllables that I'm going to be talking about, there's nothing magical about the syllables. They're just commonly used ones and the ones that make sense to me. So we have, for triplets, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? 3 notes per beat. And here we have more options, right? We could do and 2, 3, right? Where I'm not playing some of the triplets. But the first thing you really want to get used to is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And a note about triplets. Triplets are 3 notes evenly divided in a beat, right? So there are combinations of eighth notes and 16th notes, which will give you 3 notes in a beat, but they're not as evenly divided. So I'm not gonna sing those right now because I don't want to confuse you. But the thing you really want to work on with triplets is getting that even 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and, right? The next subdivision that we're going to look at is 16th notes, right? So this is 4 notes per beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the syllables we're going to use are 1, E, and So 4 evenly divided beats, or notes rather, 4 evenly divided notes per beat. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So what I would do is really take some time to make sure you have control over all of these with the syllables. One of the awkward things in the beginning is just getting used to spitting out the syllables quickly enough. So saying 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and 2 and 3. And you might want to do this with a metronome to sort of keep yourself honest, but at first the time might wobble a little as you get used to saying the syllables. And one of the best exercises you can do is just establish your 4/4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Right? And I would do this until you're really comfortable with this. The good news is, when you get comfortable with this, you're really on your way to understanding how subdivisions work, right? The not so good news is that this is like the most basic expression of every beat, where every 16th note, every triplet is played or expressed. In real life, you're going to have accents on different places, and you're going to have certain notes left in or left out. So I can't give you a completely, I mean, I could, but I won't give you an exhaustive account of every possibility. But in the same way that with eighth notes, you want to be able to do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? With triplets, you might want to do first all three, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and then you might leave off the downbeat right? And that's where these syllables, that's where the power of them really comes in, right? I'm kind of hearing in my head 1 E and right? The tells me it's the third triplet. So if I'm going 1 3 So the next thing you might want to do is accent the triplets in different places. So if you're starting off with 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you might do 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 4 and right? So in the first case, I'm accenting 1 and 2 and 3. So it's kind of like saying 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, right? But I'm using the other syllables, 1 and 2 and 3 and because the syllables really name the note in time, so we know exactly where we want to place that note. With 16th notes, we just have more options, but it's the same idea. So I could do 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and, or 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and, or 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and right? And I'm learning how to feel and name a place inside of a beat, right? The 1 and is the 4th 16th note. It's the 4th of those 4 notes. And I want to be able to hear that not only so that I can accent it, but also because I might have a scale that starts, you know, 1, 2 E and right? I might have a scale that starts on the 4th 16th note of the beat. Or on the second, 1 E and 2 E and right? So I might not start on the downbeat, and I want to feel where on the beat I am so that I can really control the time. That's the key to understanding and feeling subdivisions. So what I would say is before we go on to the next step, which is how to apply this to flamenco, I would listen to any music you like that's in 4/4 and just hear the rhythms and try to name where they are. And you'll be surprised sometimes how syncopated things can be. Like if you take, you know, the first thing everyone plays on the guitar, boom, 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 dum, 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 da, dum, right? That's pretty syncopated. Bum, 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 ba, bum. Right? You've got these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4. Right? So this exercise, in taking music you know really well, finding where the beat is, and figuring out how to name the beats using these syllables for subdivision, super powerful tool.